And that's, I think, why I love medical astrology so much as a tool for what's happening with a client and what to go do. Because, astrology has psychology, like there's psychological astrology, there's kind of karmic astrology, there's when we're doing regular astrology, not medical, we have mentally how we're thinking about things, emotionally, psychologically, and then we have the physical. And so all of those things come into play. And it's not like you're always going to have ailments physically. Sometimes it's a psychological issue or, a more spiritual thing you need to process emotionally for yourself. So I love the idea that medical astrology, you can kind of track where the pressure point or the problem might be, but you might not even be able to work on it physically, but you can then with a client talk to them about, well, what does this represent emotionally or psychologically? And you can, natural medicine has the belief, the holistic triad, mind, body, and some people say spirit or soul, but you have physical, mental, emotional, and health comes from all those levels. And I just feel like the astrology chart is like a cheat sheet.
What if your birth chart could unlock the secrets to a healthier, more balanced life? Well, in today's episode, we journey into the fascinating world of medical astrology with Kira Sutherland, a renowned naturopath and astrologer. Kira guides us through how the stars not only influence our physical bodies, but also our mental and emotional well-being. By exploring the wisdom encoded in your natal chart, you'll discover how planetary alignments can illuminate everything from hormonal balance to mental health, giving you a powerful tool for navigating life transitions like menopause with clarity and purpose. So we explore how medical astrology connects the mind, body, and spirit, offering practical insights for managing stress, health challenges, and daily choices with greater awareness. Enjoy. So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on which side of the globe you are sitting on this very moment. I have a special guest for you. I've got the beautiful Kira Sutherland. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
And believe it or not, we've just been speaking, and Kira is actually based in Australia as well, in Sydney. Which is not common. We hardly have an Australian, not for any reason, but just does. We haven't had a lot of Australians on our podcast. So welcome.
Thank you.
The way that we get started is we always love to ask our guest, what inspired you to do what you do today, Kira?
Oh my gosh. How did I become who I am? Let's see. So, always into astrology from childhood. I grew up in San Francisco in the 70s, so a little bit alternate, although I'm born from two scientists. So I kind of grew up with a sciencey side, and then San Francisco in the 70s and 80s is pretty alternative. So there was always smatterings of what I would call sacred stuff. And then in my early 20s, I was studying to become a naturopath. I'm an Australian naturopath, which is a bit different to North American naturopath. And I was lucky enough to also decide to study astrology at the same time. And I realized, well, within naturopathy or natural medicine, I was frustrated there wasn't a system to put everything through. I'm a really systematic visual person, and everyone was off studying traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda after they finished Western, healing. And I was like, well, where's our system? We must own a system that we've what happened to it? And luckily, studying astrology at the same time, I realized astrology had a whole medical side to it that we'd kind of thrown out of medicine about 400 years ago. And so I went and self-taught medical astrology because this was pre-internet. And so I slowly, through books and working with clients, I slowly kind of taught myself how to use it. Obviously, since then I've met other people that do it and things like that. But yeah, so it came out of a need of wanting a system to assess my clients energetically that I thought was missing. Hmm,
I love that. I love that. And
hmm.
as I was alluding to, for those that are either watching or listening to us, you can actually go on Kira's website and actually download the medical astrology sheet, which is wonderful, which
Mm,
is made me curious. So, what do you go for when you're working with someone? What do you
yeah,
look at from a chart perspective? Do you look at their sun? Do you look at their moon, or how do you
yeah,
diagnose an individual based on their
yeah.
chart?
So, so also I don't diagnose. I just got to be really clear on that. Legally, I can't say I'm diagnosing anything. When people come to me, I obviously do a regular medical history. I'm a health practitioner, and um, I don't. I don't do, hey, these are all the things that are going to happen bad, or these are all the illnesses you're going to have. I don't do predictive medical. What I do is I let the person tell me where their issues are before I see them. I then find that within the natal chart. So drawing up somebody's, birth chart, and I find where those stresses and weaknesses are coming from. And then it gives me an idea of how to approach treatment for them. So to also answer that question, I look at everything. Yes, absolutely. The sun, the moon, and the ascendant are your big three are absolutely vital. But when we're looking at a whole natal chart, it's like a whole blueprint of your strengths and weaknesses. And so I look at the whole chart. But yeah, the big three are big.
Okay, so you don't
Yeah,
go to the sixth house to look at health, and
I do.
you do,
Mm,
yeah. So
I do. Yeah.
are they specific houses that you sort of target when you're looking at
Yeah.
somebody's chart?
So in medical astrology, the first house that, the charts are, I'm going to assume all your listeners know astrology here. So, but the first house and the ascendant rule your physical body. They're in charge of your kind of constitution. So often we get more ailments based on our rising sign or ascendant and the first house than we actually do our sun sign. So the first house is vital for the physical body constitution. The sixth house is traditionally the house of illness or disease. So we definitely look at, what sign is on the sixth house. I can go quite technical astro, yeah? What sign is on the sixth house cusp? What planet is then in charge of, if you have Capricorn on the sixth house cusp, the ruling planet of Capricorn is Saturn. So you check out how happy Saturn is and what it's doing. You look at any planets in that sixth house. So that is a house, it's a weaker house health wise. But as we move into holistic health and preventative health, I think also the sixth house has a more modern spin to it, where it's where we do the hard work to keep ourselves healthy as well. So I look at the sixth both for illness, but how to also take care of ourselves, take care of yourself. The eighth house is also traditionally a weaker house. It's the house of like what you're inheriting, genetics. It's the house of surgery. Traditionally, it's considered the house of death, but I'm not going to predict anything going on there. That's a lot going on when people pass away. And the 12th house is the house of chronic illness. Sixth house would be more acute. Opposite is chronic in the 12th, hospitals, institutions. It's kind of where we need to, even just being sick and staying in your bed is a 12th house experience. So those are the first, sixth, eighth, 12th. They're the biggies, but you can have an illness come from any planet and any house. So, as much as traditionally those are the houses we've looked at, I believe it can come from anywhere.
So I've got a few questions. So
Of course.
when,
That's
because
right.
obviously on the eighth house, it's a psychological aspect as well. So are we
Yeah.
talking about, do you look at the psychological element as well as the physical? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I think, why I love medical astrology so much as a tool for what's happening with a client and what to go do. Because, astrology has psychology, like there's psychological astrology, there's kind of karmic astrology, there's when we're doing regular astrology, not medical, we have mentally how we're thinking about things, emotionally, psychologically, and then we have the physical. And so all of those things come into play. And it's not like you're always going to have ailments physically. Sometimes it's a psychological issue or, a more spiritual thing you need to process emotionally for yourself. So I love the idea that medical astrology, you can kind of track where the pressure point or the problem might be, but you might not even be able to work on it physically. But you can then, with a client, talk to them about, well, what does this represent emotionally or psychologically? And you can, natural medicine has the belief, we call it the holistic triad: mind, body, and some people say spirit or soul, but you have physical, mental, emotional, and health comes from all those levels. And I just feel like the astrology chart is like a cheat sheet into how to know what, if you have eighth house ailment physically, you can then go work on the psychology of the eighth house or emotionally what's happening for you. And if you do that, sometimes the physical gets better as well, right? It's all connected, that idea of a holistic triad.
Yeah, I'm right into that. I mean, for me, I'm big into, I see an Ayurvedic doctor, I see a
Yeah.
Chinese doctor. So I'm big onto alternative medicine. And I've also just recently had a genetic test done and found that
Mm.
I cannot take any form of chemicals. I react to them. So,
Yeah.
which has been really interesting, especially now looking at that medical astrology chart that I've just downloaded from your website.
Yeah.
As I was reading some of the gland and the systems that, and even my body parts that are triggered,
Yeah.
I could relate to all of
Yeah.
that. So it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing. So it's not a predictive tool. Your client will come in, they'll tell you what's going on. Then you look at the chart to give you a bit of an idea, like looking at their blueprint as to what kind of, like, either remedy, vitamins,
Yeah.
black flowers, or herbal
Yeah.
teas or anything like that you would then recommend.
Yeah. So some medical astrologers will be more predictive, but I, as a health practitioner, I, and there's nothing wrong with the people that do choose to do that, but that's not my style of what I do. And I think as a health practitioner, because I have so many other tools as a naturopath, I'm a herbalist, I'm a nutritionist, I'm a homeopath, I'm also a sports nutritionist. So and I love essences and all the vibrational stuff. So I have so many other tools. For me, it's better that I work on what's going on for the person now, or we can look back at the timing of when an illness started and kind of look at what was taking the pressure then, and do we need to work there as well. So yeah, I use it much more like I said, like a blueprint, or it's the scaffolding as to which systems are going to take more pressure. And or like, with detoxification channels, right? If you're saying you're sensitive to chemicals, so that's detoxification pathways, that's the liver. How do I, yeah, it's like gives me the hints as to how to still work naturopathically with somebody. So I don't divide it up between that. Yeah, it
I
gives
love
me,
that. And
yeah.
even the Ayurvedic doctor that I see, he does Vedic astrology,
Yeah.
but he looks into your chart to see exactly similar to what you're speaking about. He was telling me that he once was working with a cancer patient
Yeah.
and was able to see what he could do and how he could treat her, and the longevity of it as well. So he was able
Yeah.
to prolong, but not completely cure it, but he was able to work within her chart
Yeah.
to see what was around, because he also talked about karma.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I, Vedic, with an Ayurvedic practitioner doing Vedic or Jyotish astrology, as we will call it, is a bit more predictive. They have really clear patterns and predictions, and I don't do that style of astrology. So they do sometimes have more periods of, oh, this coming up is what's happening here. So they will do more prediction, if that's what people want. I I don't do that because you don't know, with a transit coming up, transit hitting. I don't know if that transit's going to be physical, emotional, mental, if it's going to be something happens to a family member and then it's how you have to go process it, or is it going to be you actually having a physical ailment? And I don't want to be that predictive style. And also, I guess I have that thing around, I don't want to get in the way of anybody else's learning, or karma is probably not the word I would learn, their process. Like if I say, oh, you have cancer and you're going to get better by this date, I ethically have an issue, or predicting how long they're going to have something for. I have an issue because if I say they're going to get better, are they actually going to then actually take care of themselves to get better? Or are they just going to assume I said they're better, going to get better, and they don't do anything? I think there's ethical things around prediction that I'm just not, as a practitioner of almost 30 years, I'm not comfortable with. Karmic illness, again, I do I believe in past lives? Yes. Do I believe the astrology chart is something we bring in to work on, right? We've made some agreement or, with what we've already been really good at, and we're bringing forward things that we're here to release, things that we're here to learn about. But I also don't want to make anybody believe they caused an illness or they deserved an illness because of past doings. I really struggle with the guilt that would come with that. So, do I think everything happens for a reason? Mm, I think in hindsight, once you're through something, you will absolutely see the reasons or the story you needed to learn about, but I'm really cautious around. Does that make sense? I get cautious around it the older I get.
100%. And are you alluding to the North Node and the South Node?
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
is that what you look at, the South Node? What is it that we need to um,
Release.
let release? And then is it also, is this what you look for? Where do you see the karma? Do you see that in the
So
South Node, or do you see that in the 12th house? How do you find the karma in
yeah.
the chart?
So, in regular astrology, not medical, but it's the same for medical. We talk about the North and the South node being, the South node is what we've come in with that we're already really good at. We were probably that sign last time around, or those are the patterns that we've done already. And we've come into this lifetime to learn more about the opposite sign where the North node is. Um, and so it's a lifetime spent releasing what we're already good at and moving towards something that we need to embody. But it's also about learning to balance between the two, because you got to hold that wisdom that it's also wisdom you've brought in, and carry it in that balance to that other end. And in medical, we talk about the North node being where we were pulling in energy. We often have a lot of energy where the North node is, although we can kind of over pull in energy. We kind of can blow out our circuits in some ways. And then the South node is considered a weaker spot medically. It's where we have, the way I visualize it is like, it's where you have a bucket with holes in it. We leak from our South node energetically. Um, because we always have to kind of remember to be there and what we already have brought in with. But yeah, as we're moving towards others. So I do use the nodes a lot for, I see them often triggered by transit during health issues, be it a health issue starting or a health issue finally ending. A transit to the North node can often be the finishing of an ailment or the understanding of what you needed to learn from the ailment. So yeah, they are quote a karmic spot, absolutely. Um, in medical, I don't. It's just a weaker spot physically where that South node is. Strong spot where the North node is, if we're talking natal. But often when I have an astrology read, when I'm looking at medical with somebody, and I've given suggestions to the whole chart and what they should be working on. I often give them an assignment to go and work on their nodes psychologically. Because by doing that, I think it brings the vibration of the whole person up. When we're doing nodal work, it feels so good because we can feel we're coming into alignment. And then I hope energetically the health comes into alignment. So it's often an assignment that I give, that they have to go learn more about their nodes.
I'd love to. Are you able to bring that to life a little bit, just to give us as a bit of an example?
Oh, well, Oh my gosh. So let's talk North Node Aries because that's where it is right now. South Node Libra. So, South Node Libra has come into this lifetime. Now I'm talking more psychologically here, but they've come in. Libra is all about the other, the partner, taking care of somebody else, being the behind the scenes person supporting others. Whereas North Node Aries is about learning about the self in this lifetime. You need to learn how to take care of yourself, self care, but also be that pioneer and do things for yourself. You're not supposed to just be a support person. And being a support person is an amazing job, whether it's partners or kids, and it's not saying a person with a North Node in Aries isn't also a support person, but they also have a lot of learning about their own boundaries and taking care of themselves. And so when somebody comes in with health things and say that is their nodal alignment anyway, we often have people not taking enough time for themselves or for their own health. We have this. I had one of these recently. It was female, this mother sacrifice, doing everything for the partner, doing everything for the kids, not enough time to, eat well for herself, not enough time to exercise. There was no self care. And her health was just, your health's going to fall apart if that's going on anyway. But especially with that nodal axis, getting her to remember she had to take care of herself first to even be there for the other people, that's a big assignment. And so we look at how daily to do those things, but also for her to go and read. I'm a huge fan of Jan Spiller's nodal book, Astrology for the Soul. And that book has like 40 pages on each North Node, and getting her to read those and to remember what she's here to be working on. So I will, besides working on her health, I send her away to go work on all the things that are listed in that book because it has these like little assignments in it. It's amazing, actually.
So that's what you mean by the assignments. I was really curious about the assignment. We were saying you actually get your clients to actually work on assignment with the North and South Node.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Physically, but psychologically, emotionally, everything, right? I do
Yeah.
all those levels because that's holistic health, is all those levels anyway. But sometimes we have health stuff that we can't completely fix. So we have to learn to live with it. But there's things they can do to take the pressure off that physically, but also by working on that node, hopefully the whole vibration comes up and eases the physical.
So, do you look at, because obviously, it's funny. I was having this conversation the other day from a collective point of view. They'll say, let's say, let's say the transit Pluto in Aquarius. Okay,
Mhm.
obviously, as a collective, that has an impact energetically. But then, obviously, I always say it's like the cosmic forecast. It's what you do with it and how you dance with it. It's not,
Yeah.
doom and gloom. It's about
Yeah.
transformation and change. And that could be scary, but that could be also really a lot of fun as well, right? It depends on the meaning you give whatever you're experiencing. It's what we do
Yeah.
with it and how we dance with it.
I,
But so you're looking at it from the blueprint, so the natal, but do you also look and map the transit over to see what's currently, so obviously
yeah.
the blueprint will show what they've come here to experience,
Yep.
and then the transit will be help you identify
Triggers. Yeah.
what are the triggers.
Yeah, absolutely. So we always look at the natal first. In a consult, often we're only on the natal the first time. Sometimes we'll look back at when an illness happened or when an accident happened. When did they get sick? So we'll go back and look at the transits to their chart when they got sick. You can also look at the transits as a horary chart. Do you do horary astrology?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. All right.
So, okay. So in medical, we call a horary chart a decumbiture chart. Decumbiture is just Latin for to take to bed or to lie down. So we will do a horary chart from the moment somebody got sick Or if we don't have that timing wise, you can actually take it from the moment of the consult for the client and look at that chart as the illness. And there's different like horary rules to play out for that medically. A lot of traditional astrologers really focus on decumpature. I am bigger on natal, and then I'll use decumpature as an added tool. Um, Decumpature, yeah. So I look at transits, I look at natal, I look at transits, I look at decumpature. If I need to, I look at progressions. I think the progressed chart, especially sun and moon, but inner planets, especially if they're changing direction by progression. But I especially look at sun and moon nutritionally and what they're churning through vitamin and mineral wise, depending on those. Um, I've even started looking at solar returns, and is there a print, is that a print for the year? People are into, I'm going really astrological here. You could look at what perfected year somebody is in, and is that, especially if they have a perfect, sixth house perfected year, we know health is going to be at the forefront, maybe, or work. And I'm a huge fan of lunar phase returns. So lunar phase, in case people don't know, is when the moon comes back to the same shape it was the moment you were born. And that happens once a month. And originally I learned lunar phases medically for fertility, but I now use it to cycle people into all kinds of styles of exercise. When they want to do dieting, I use lunar phase. I use it as your own, like how everybody goes, oh, the new moon to the full moon is the building phase, full moon to the new moon releasing phase. I'm all for that. I use the physical lunar phase, but I think using your own lunar phase is tapping into your actual cycles. I know Vedic actually does do that as well. I didn't study that originally, but kind of but yeah, I played with that a lot. And so I do monthly assignments for people health-wise based on starting at their lunar phase return. Does that make any sense?
Yes, absolutely. It actually sounds a little bit complex. It sounds
It's
like there's a
complex.
lot in it. So you
Mm.
don't actually have to have anything wrong with you. You can actually use this to improve your health, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think medical astrology wasn't overly designed like that originally, but now that we know so much about health and preventative health, and I guess for myself and a lot of people that practice medical astrology that are health practitioners, like especially alternative ones that do preventative health, I think there's an amazing overlap of how to do it. Which I guess is just the style of how I practice. Because for me, if I can't give somebody some important stuff to go work on to be healthier, I don't feel like as a practitioner I've done my job. Like I'm not, I could sit here and tell you about, oh, this is your sun sign, it's these body parts, but I'm an Aries sun, and so I'm all about you got to have some action to go do with it, right? Yes, it's nice to learn about yourself, but go do something with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And are you seeing so when we were talking about collectively, what it's done, because obviously when you have a look at it collectively, like for example, even we were talking to another lady who does astrology and numerology combined. And
Mm,
so we're in number 8. So collectively we're experiencing what the energy. Are you seeing patterns of individuals coming to you with same
yes.
things to work on?
Yeah. And I think that really, we started to go there when we were talking about transits. So the global transits for everybody, like Pluto moving into Aquarius, or, Saturn right now is in Pisces. I have to remember the chart. I haven't spent a lot of time doing that until recently. I've looked much more at what's the global health issues happening and how is that being shown in the chart? Like if you look back to, everyone's favorite word, COVID and the pandemic, you can kind of look back to I've done the charts for like when WHO announced, World Health Organization was like, this is global pandemic or epidemic, I can't remember. And what was happening, like there was a lot going on in Pisces when that was happening. And Pisces is the immune system. And so you can see that overlapping, or, Pluto going into Aquarius. I don't think it's been there long enough for me to really say, but we do have to think about Aquarius is the electrics of the nervous system, right? Like it's circulation, calves, ankles, but it's the messages across the nervous system. And I'm going to drop down to a different area. So transformation in that, and like you got to think about all the electronics we're around and all how we communicate. So there's something there, but I'm really fascinated at the moment by the nodes. I've been looking at the nodes more than other things, with especially the nodes having moved now into the North Node Aries, South Node Libra, but also Chiron coming through at the same time. I think now Chiron is in some signs for a really long time and shorter for others. So it's in Aries because of its elliptical orbit, it'll be in Aries for like 7 or 8 years. And with the nodes there as well, I think the North Node really highlights what we're all looking at. And right now, for me, I'm fascinated by everyone getting diagnosed, being all these different styles of autism, all the ADHD. We've all of a sudden gone, oh, we forgot to look at females and those assigned female at birth. And turns out as many of them have ADHD as everybody else. And just the neuroplasticity, because you got to remember, Aries doesn't specifically rule the nervous system, but it rules the head and the brain. It's like, we're uncovering how we're wired differently, or some people are. And I'm fascinated by people owning that. Like people aren't like, oh my God, I'm ADHD, or, oh, all these people are now like, oh, I'm autistic, that what we used to call Asperger's, but now is A1, autism, that mild, or there's AU ADHD. And I'm like, people are owning it. And they're like, this is how I'm built. This is who I am, which is very Aries pioneering to just be like, I'm going to own it. But it's also about how we're operating in our head. And I love that that's happening right now with Chiron there as well, because Chiron in medical astrology is about where we have a wound that we can't ever fix. But as we learn to live with it, there's this Chiron in the end actually had to kind of surrender to the fact that he had a permanent wound. And I love this head neurodivergent acceptance, and people are like, this is who I am. It's not a disease. It's actually not is it actually a mental health problem, or it's just how we're wired? And I know you get what I'm saying, but I'm fascinated that this is happening with all of this in Aries. It's so beautiful that we're accepting it. And we're like, oh, they're autistic. That's amazing. That's their superpower. That's a talent. Or ADHD. I don't know. There's a beauty to that surrender of that's who I am. And it's okay. That self-acceptance that's coming for so many people. I think it's an incredible gift.
I do so relate to what you're saying. I hear it more and more and more. And I actually agree. I've been saying with your superpower, if you look at it, and it's the meaning we give it, right? So whatever you get diagnosed with, or whatever somebody says, hey, you've got ADHD or Asperger's or anxiety or depression, there is more of that taking control of what's taking place. And even for myself, I dance with anxiety. I don't say I have anxiety, I experience anxiety. So it creates a little bit of and so what is it that I do? And I take lots of magnesium, lots of magnesium. I use lots of vitamins as a way to work with that. But yes, at the same time, I think the more that we try to disassociate ourselves with it, the more we're trying to push it away. I think the more difficult it is for us to
It
integrate and
gets in
work
our
with.
way.
Yeah, it gets in our way. Yeah, exactly. So
And isn't that North Node, right? We got to come towards it, not away from it, right?
yes.
So I'm fascinated by that, right? Like North Node was in Taurus, especially when it was in Gemini when the pandemic hit. I'm jumping, but I'm not. And when the pandemic first hit, when COVID first hit, it was hitting the lungs really hard, right? The big thing was people ending up on, respirators. And that was when the North Node was in Gemini. As soon as the North Node moved to Taurus, we had the next round of COVID happen, and it was much more people. It did go to the lungs, but people were talking about the sore throats a lot more, right? And you can see the body because Taurus is the throat. And then it's moved into Aries, and now people getting COVID. Yes, lung, throat, but you often hear people about, oh yeah, I had a big fever this time, or huge headache with it, and fuzzy. Like you can see it morphing as it goes. Yeah.
But I'm hearing a lot of people, and I'm honestly, I say, my sister always tells me, it's the solar flares, it's it's
Mm,
all the the changes that's happening on the earth as well that are impacting the collective. But there is a lot more head stuff going on, from migraines to headaches to just head stuff
yeah.
at the
Oh
moment.
God, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Yeah. And we're there, like going straight science, we have all this new understanding literally for the last 10 years, but concussion therapy is a huge thing at the moment, and traumatic brain injury. And we're coming out with all these, this isn't even medical astrologers, just medical, all these different ways that we need to learn how to treat it that are different than we've thought before. I love that as well.
I've never heard of what is concussion therapy.
Oh, like how to treat somebody that's had a concussion. Like we're starting to know scientifically more things like creatine as a supplement. Creatine has always been something people take for muscle building, but it turns out creatine is amazing post-traumatic brain injury um, for recovery. We now know as well females take twice as long to recover from concussions as men. So the way we treat females with concussion should be very slower and not expect the same milestones at the same time. Like we're learning a lot.
It's funny, creatine I just heard about for menopause. It's
Yes.
really good for women going through menopause. So how does that work with your chart? Because obviously everyone, and it's interesting, everyone experiences it differently. So I guess that's also in the chart, that when it's that time of your
Yeah.
life, how does that work? What do you look for?
Yeah. Yeah. I keep thinking I need to write a lecture on menopause and astrology. There's different theories about when menopause starts for people, but it's and again, people are starting a little bit sooner, or are we just knowing it's starting sooner? But, the average age for, let's actually, perimenopause is what everyone's actually talking about. Menopause is once you're not bleeding for a whole year, but all the pre-symptoms is peri, typically between 45 and 55 for most people, but we're now realizing women are having drops in hormones before then. People often talked about a 3/4 lunar phase return. So looking at that 28-year cycle, and then it's 3/4 of the way around again. But I've been reading old medical astrology books on this, and that's really, I could pick any transit that happens at 45 to 50 and be like, oh, that's what starts it off. I definitely think Chiron return, which happens for most people between 48 and 51. Most people would say 50, but again, it depends where it was. Um, I think Chiron return is the biggie. I haven't looked at other things deeply yet. It's kind of research I should do. Um, but I think Chiron return is that real shift. Definitely by 50, most people have some symptoms, and it's that real shift for those going through menopause to readjust how they feel about themselves. And Chiron is often involved in health ailments. So depending on what sign it's in, depending what house it's in, we could be experiencing different symptoms, but I haven't, it's a great assignment to go look at it. How different people cope with it. But yeah, I think 50, and again, they talk about you got your maiden energy pre-period, you got your, whole life with that cycle, and then which is that mother cycle, whether people become a physical mother or not, and then you have that crone phase, which is actually considered the power phase, right? You hold all your own energy for yourself. And I think that Chiron return is that real jumping over that threshold into owning your own power, but releasing a lot of the physicality. I mean, we can look amazing after Chiron return, but also releasing that physicality of youth, whether we want to or not. And I think that's a really interesting thing to look at. I got to write down that I got to research this more.
I love that. I love it. And do you know, one thing I have noticed is there's a lot more younger women in their mid 20s starting to work through their hormones, which I've never, ever heard of. So do you think this, are you seeing that in your practice, where you're seeing a lot younger women coming to you about working with their hormones?
Yeah, I mean, as a naturopath, we've always worked on hormones. So to me, I've always done that with people. You have period problems, you have acne, you have pain with periods, whichever, or an irregular cycle. That's what herbal medicine and naturopathy is genius at. We have herbs to help regulate cycles. Whereas once the pill came about in the 60s, everyone was like, oh, well, the pill regulates cycles. And it's like, no, it doesn't. It shuts down your cycle and makes you pretend to think you have a cycle, right? The pill does not regulate hormones. There is a time and place where people can be on the pill and it's amazing for them. I'm not going to say I'm anti-pill, but I'm anti-pill for thinking. I'm not a fan of the pill for thinking it's going to regulate your hormones, because it's not. It literally shuts down your own ovulation, and you need ovulation to make your own progesterone. And the pill doesn't contain progesterone, it contains progestrogen, which is different. So I've gone off on a tangent here. So yes, we are in an age now where women are talking periods and hormone, like teenagers are discussing periods with their boyfriends. It's awesome. I think we're in an owning phase about our health as females, where we're not shamed into not talking about it, right? Like these are different generations, the Gen Zs and the alphas are coming through, and they're owning it. And I think it's beautiful. I think the generations before, the millennials, the X's, the boomers, they've opened the doors. But I love it. I love that owning. I don't know how to match that up astrologically yet, but people are definitely coming for hormones and cycles long before menopause. But menopause is now the huge discussion topic. And because I asked this the other day with other naturopaths, because I'm in my early 50s, or I'm 55. It's not early, I'm 55. I don't remember menopause being talked about like this 30 years ago, even when I was studying. And now it's like, it's everywhere. But sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe that's just because I'm that age. But people are like, no, this is like, we were shushed into just suffering. And now we're seeing it. But we also, sorry, I'm on like a monologue here. One of the topics I lecture on in just naturopathy and sports nutrition is the fact that females weren't involved in a lot of clinical research until the last 10 or 15 years. There were laws created eventually, depending on what country we're in the 80s, 90s. Some countries, Australia, I'm looking at you, still don't have laws that you have to include both sexes in research. So we just know more lately about women. We're actually bothering to look and go, oh, women's bodies act, or those assigned female at birth act very differently to the male, assigned male at birth bodies. And we're realizing it's been really dangerous that we haven't studied 51% of the population as much as we should have. We have studied it.
Yeah,
That was a
I've actually
monologue.
got her
Sorry.
book here. We had Dr. Mary Claire Haver on the show. I'm sure you know who she is.
Yeah.
She's a menopause,
Yeah.
she's a guru on menopause, and yeah, she's really doing a lot of research around that. And so, what are your thoughts about postmenopause? Because it's interesting. I was speaking to my Chinese doctor the other day while I was getting my acupuncture and my cupping and my corsage. She was saying that even like postmenopause, it is important to still keep a little bit of estrogen in your body for your bones and for your heart and for your brain, which is
Oh,
pretty much what
yeah.
Dr. Mary talks about. I'm pointing over there because I've
Yeah.
got a book.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So clinically, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of what we call body identical, bioidentical hormones. And from the research coming out now, because it is so new, it's looking amazing. It's looking at, and it's not about just staying young, it's about preventing, the minute you get to menopause, female health risks skyrocket because of the loss of hormones. So, if by adding in some hormones or holding hormones more stable, we can prevent those things, I'm really fascinated. I'm really fascinated where this is going. How much research do we even have on this yet? Not a lot, but the research is looking sensational. It's like even prevention of dementia and brain changes. All the research looking at brain changes and dementia, we usually start researching at about the age of 60, 65, those brains in men and women. In reality, we should have been researching the females or assigned female at birth. We should have been researching them from 45, 50, because as you lose, especially that estrogen, that's where the major brain architecture changes start. But we've only been looking at women after all those changes have already happened. We actually haven't been looking at them at the dynamic change phase. Did that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I can experience that for me when I was going through and still going through it. Even though I'm post, I still, I myself still dancing with estrogen, because if you have not enough, you get migraines. If you have too much, you get migraines. So it's
Yeah.
that fine balance and yeah, and getting it
Yeah.
right. So how do you see that in the chart? So I know we were talking about men.
Ooh.
Do you work with individuals, like how to work? Because I can't tell you how many women I have spoken to that are struggling with menopause,
Yeah.
struggling, and they get put on antidepressants and it doesn't work, and then they get put on other stuff, and then like on 6 different types of tablets just to function.
Yeah.
So how do you use their chart to help them navigate something that is going to happen to all of us? Some are some worse than others. Obviously, I know some people that, for example, even my Chinese doctor was saying it's not a common thing in China because they do have a lot of tofu, a lot
Tofu.
of soy, which is a natural estrogen. So they don't really experience, which is really interesting, as from a culture, they don't really experience menopause,
Well,
which is
they do,
fascinating.
but not to the extent that we have all the symptoms, right? In the West, we got to look at in the West. And the minute somebody moves from China or Japan, they do experience it if they're living a Western style life. So, it, yes, menopause, it's, perimenopause, menopause, that's normal. We're supposed to go through that. Um, in the chart, I haven't in the chart, I haven't specifically, so you're gonna like inspire me to go and really look at this for the next year or two. I would use the chart more. Again, it would be like you coming and being like, yes, I'm perimenopausal, this is my age bracket, but I would more work from what are the symptoms you're experiencing? Because some people, it's brain fog and migraine. I haven't had a migraine in menopause, not one. But other people are going to be like hot flashes or really moody, or they have a lot of dryness. So I would think, because natally, I would look at why they're predisposed to those symptoms, right? Because there's such a myriad of symptoms. I would more use the natal chart to look at what their symptoms are more likely to be. But again, I don't want to predict that, oh, you're going to have horrible hot flushes. I'm not going to say that. I would look more at the way I do it, and this is for menopause and for other things. What are the systems that you personally have a lot of stress on? Your sun, your moon, your ascendant, or if like you have a stellium somewhere, or what is your sixth house? Because that's a house of illness. What are the systems most under stress? And so it gives me a hint as to the underlying systems that if I support those systems, hopefully everything starts to do better. Like, how do I explain this a better way? A Virgo rules the small intestine, so absorption of nutrients. It's a lot of how we absorb our food, and it has a little rulership of the nervous system as well, because planet Mercury is in charge of the nervous system. So if I have a Virgo showing up with perimenopause, I'm going to be like, let's get after your gut. Let's balance the gut brain axis. Let's go for the vagal nerve. Let's support the nervous system, which is just fried for most of them. But I'm really going to work on, gut integrity, intestinal integrity. Whereas if I have an Aries showing up, Aries is the head, it's hot, it's the adrenals and things going on in the head. So I'm going to ask about memory. I'm going to ask about hot flushes, migraines. Other people can get migraines. So, but it's their adrenals that I know are going to be, I'm going to go after their cortisol levels. I'm going to go after supporting the adrenals herbally. So it's more that it just gives me this little road map, or it's like a treasure map into which systems might I might get further if I support those. I will still symptomatically treat. Did that make sense?
Yeah,
No one's ever
100%.
asked me some of these questions. I'm loving these.
No, it's
Yeah.
making sense. I'm also thinking about my Ayurvedic doctor who works very much on the elements as well.
Yeah.
If you've got too much, fire in your system, and
Yeah.
obviously you look at the elements too, because I can see that on your chart. You can have a
Yeah.
look at that.
Yeah.
And is that something that you also oversee if somebody's got too much fire in their chart?
Yeah. Absolutely. So we look at elemental balance. Chinese medicine, Ayurveda uses 5 elements. In the West, we do have 5, but we tend to focus on 4. So we do have the 5th element, which is ether. That kind of births the other elements. I actually went and did a whole year of Ayurveda just so I could understand the difference between how Ayurveda approaches elements versus, kind of the Greek system. So yeah, I would definitely look at elemental balance and or what element is missing, what is too high. And I work a lot with foods and herbs to cool people off, or do they need more moisture? Do they need more heat? And we look at it that way. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the first things I actually do with a natal chart. The first thing I will assess, besides looking at the whole chart, is I'm like, where's their elements at? What's happening there? A lot of people naturally do things to assist where they're lacking elements, but sometimes we also overlove our strong element and kind of blow ourselves out that way. Mm.
I love it. So obviously you do this virtual. So for anybody that's listening or watching the show today, they can approach you virtually
Yeah.
and you can treat them virtually and then I guess send them
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
herbs.
yeah. So I do, although I have a wait list, just to warn people. If you get on my website, just sending me an email to say you want to book in, I will direct you straight back to the wait list. I am 3 weeks away from finishing my first book. So I'm seeing less clients this year. So there's a bit of a wait list, but there is a button to put your name on a wait list. Or if you're really fascinated, I have a lot of beginner classes where you can learn basically the same stuff I would go through in a consult, but more global. Um, yeah, but yeah, if somebody's overseas, I make them go source their own nutrients or herbs. I don't post stuff overseas. It's too hard.
No, and I love the fact that you educate people how to look after themselves using
Yeah,
their astrological blueprint.
yeah,
And then knowing that, I guess that's like obviously the medical astrology chart that I've downloaded gives me a bit of insight into what
yeah,
I should be looking into,
yeah.
but the short courses.
Yeah, so that chart is downloadable for free on my website. Let me find it so I can hold one up. That's it, in color, right? Was it color or white that you downloaded? Or
It
did
was
you choose to?
mine's white. Yours is
Oh,
pretty. Mine's white, but I've
okay.
highlighted my ones.
I alternate what's available between white and color, and it goes through the basic rulerships. Just know it also goes through tissue salts, which are a type of homeopathy. It goes through vitamins, flower essences, herbal teas, and diet. Just know, and there is a disclaimer there, but you're not supposed to go do everything there. I mean, you can go eat all those foods for sure, but please don't anybody go take a herb unless they actually have an understanding of what that herb or that supplement is for, and checking that it's not interfering with medication. You know, natural medicine is amazing, but it can interfere with prescription medication, or it can increase your blood pressure or decrease it. So you have to please go see a health care practitioner before making any big changes or taking herbs. I just need to be clear on that. So my stuff is for educational purposes that you can download, not for
I
treatment.
I love that. I love that. I'm also very conscious of your time. So I guess we will, I think you've answered all my questions. Uh, as we wrap up the show, we always love to ask our guests to leave three shiny gold nuggets for our audience. So what would be those three practical
Ooh.
exercises or three tips or three things that you would like to leave for our audience?
Yeah, I would say go add up your elemental makeup. Go realize how you are elementally, and then go find some activities to balance that. If you have too much fire, go do some watery activities, swimming, taking baths, things like that, drinking enough fluid. Um, what else? Just learning about yourself and realizing, yeah, just other nugget. Um, they're all just regular health stuff. They're almost not astrological, everything that wants to come out. The world struggles to exercise. How about this? Figure out your sun, moon, your ascendant, and types of activities that those things would enjoy, and you probably will be better at sticking to the exercise if it's fitting who you are. Like, the air signs need more social physical activity, playing doubles, pickleball, or tennis, or joining a gym that's social, having a running partner. I think that's an incredible way to exercise more. And what else? Just yeah, I don't third nugget. I should have thought of these before we talked. Just being gentle with yourself. Learning your astrology chart medically is a big process, and don't try to change it all at once, but just find one little bit to nourish and then learn another little bit. Don't try to do it all at once.
I love that because yeah, we can get. I think for me, I don't know how many substances I'm taking, all these herbal medicines that I'm taking to try to work through different elements. But I think we can overdo it sometimes,
Yeah.
and I think balance is really key. So Kira, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. This is the first time we've had someone talk about medical astrology, so it's been really fascinating. I'm
Yeah.
really intrigued, and I'm sure a lot
Yeah.
of people are going to reach out to do your course. I'm going to look into it as well because I'm really keen to learn more about
Yeah.
my medical history and how to work with what is in place for me right now as well. And I love the fact
Yeah.
that you look at all ailments, not just there's so many to
I'm
it.
not just looking at a sickness. Yeah, I look at the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Where do you
Thank
hang
you for
out the
having me.
most? We'll have everything in the show notes, but where do you hang out the most?
Oh, you mean like on social media?
Yeah.
Oh, Instagram.
Instagram. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for your time, your energy, and
Thanks for having
sharing
me.
your wealth of wisdom. Thank you.
Thanks.